Welcome to Innovator Insights, where we explore the minds and journeys of today's most inspiring innovators. In this episode, Scott Fisher sits down with Eric Curts, a leading voice in educational technology and a passionate advocate for sharing knowledge. From his early days as a math teacher to becoming a nationally recognized innovator and expert in EdTech, Eric shares how necessity sparked his creativity, how teachers can leverage AI, and why his biggest belief is that done is better than perfect. Stay tuned for a conversation packed with insights on innovation, problem solving, and the future of education.
Welcome to the Innovator Insights podcast. I'm Scott Fisher, and today with me I have Eric Curts. How are you doing today, Eric?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to chat here today.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. We were chatting a little bit earlier, and I got to know you a little bit, and that was wonderful. But maybe we could start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing or what it is that inspired you when you were starting out as a student or a young professional. How'd that come about?
Well, absolutely. So this is my 33rd year in education. So I've been doing this a long time. But as far as what got me into it, initially, when I think way back to that, when I was in high school, I actually did a lot of tutoring for my classmates. I felt pretty comfortable with especially math content. That was an area that came pretty easily to me. And so I would help some of my classmates. And I found that I enjoyed being able to help them, and that I seemed to be able to do a decent job of taking a complex concept and making it relatable. And there was just that feeling of seeing somebody when the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, I get it. And you're like, I like this. This is nice. And so when I went to college, that ended up being my major. I was a math major. And it wasn't that I loved math. I was much more passionate about science or language arts or things like that. But again, I said, this is something a lot of kids struggle with. So why not? Let's do that. Let's pick a topic that might be sometimes considered challenging or dry or things like that. Certainly that does not need to be the case at all. And let's do that. Let's breathe some life into it. And so that's how I got into education in the beginning. And I did teach math for 7 years at a middle school level. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. But I also loved technology. And so while I was in my role as a teacher, I kind of became known as the unofficial building tech guy. If you had a question, go see Eric. He'll help you with your printer. Go see Eric if you're not sure how to do something. And I started doing professional development sessions for our own staff, on teaching them how to use that time. It would have been things probably dealing with Microsoft Word and so forth at that time. This was back in the early 90s. And so then around 1999, we had a new job posting in our district for a technology integration specialist. We'd call that a tech coach nowadays or something like that. And the idea was we suddenly had technology in the state of Ohio, where I'm at. There was some grant funding that had, made it out to the schools, where schools were now getting internet connectivity, and schools were getting typically 5 computers per classroom. That was the initiative they were trying to do. And it's like, well, we got all this stuff. Now, what do we do with it? And so the idea was, let's get somebody who can help the teachers use it. And I made that switch. I went from teaching kids to teaching teachers, and I have done that ever since. That is still my current role. I'm not at that district anymore, but I still serve that district. I'm at the county office. So I was there for 21 years at that district, and for 12 years, I've been at a regional service center that supports that district, as well as about 35 or so other districts. And so my role is that, to help teachers use technology in their classroom with a big focus on curriculum, a big focus on how can we use this ultimately to help our students. And that's where I'm at today. And that was sort of the path that got me to that.
Well, you seem very passionate, and you're well known in the industry, highly regarded. I mean, I'm a former director of technology at a school district, and I first became familiar with you and the work because of the fact that you were so kind to share it and make it available to everybody. So that was very much appreciated. But to get you to the point you're at, by any chance, was there a specific person that really guided you or led you in the path that you ended up going down?
Well, I don't know that I would say it was a person as much it was a situation, and it was more that things. So I was at North Canton City Schools. That's the school district that I worked at. Phenomenal school. That's where my grandchildren go. Can't say enough good things about it. But a unique thing happened. So, right around that time, when I was moving into the role as this technology integration specialist, we had a large company, which was Hoover Appliances, that was there in North Canton. That's where they had their main location, and they went through some changes, and they decided to pull out of North Canton and to relocate. Now, our town was kind of built on Hoover Appliances. Like it was like the biggest employer. It affected so much. And so what happened was, in essence, our tax base got negatively affected by that. And so here I come into this new position where it's like, okay, your job now is to help teachers use all this technology. But guess what, Eric? We have no money. you now have no budget. That thing you thought you were going to have, you don't have. And it was swift. It was a massive impact. Now, North Can has bounced back and they're doing phenomenal, but there was a period of time there where we all had to really step back and say, okay, how are we going to do this?
Right.
And so that's something that has been a piece of everything I've done ever since, which is, how can we use the tools we already have in a way that's creative? Maybe we can't afford the latest and greatest tool, or we can't get this other thing. And so I think educators always do this. Anything you give us, we'll look at it from a different angle and go, well, I could use it for this, or I could do this with it. And so that's really where it all began, where I'd say, okay, that's why I started using Google products. That's why our district was maybe the third or fourth district in the state of Ohio to adopt what was Google Apps for Education at that time, then G Suite, now Google Workspace. But it was because I needed to bring resources to the staff when we did not have, and students, when we did not have funding to be able to do it any other way. And so the Google Suite was a way to do that. Well, not only did that bring the Google tools into the school, but then it was like, how can we be creative, in how we use these tools? How can we take Google Slides, and do something with it that, maybe it wasn't designed for? It's made for presentations, but, we can make stop motion animation. We can do all these other things with it. So that was a piece of it. The other piece that came out of that was just the need to create things. So I am not going to try to claim to be a programmer, not anymore anyway. I certainly have lost, I think I've forgotten anything I ever learned. But at that time, I did learn how to program in a language called Perl. That was a very common programming language on the internet back then. And again, because we didn't have resources, I created them. I ended up creating something that it was like a home page or web page construction kit. And basically, way back then, in the mid 90s, we didn't have the easy tools we have now where you can create a website. So I made one where our teachers could go on and they could create a files page and a lesson plan page and a links page, and they could, create, an announcements page, and they were able to have websites at a time when to do so otherwise, you probably needed to know HTML or have the
Right.
Macromedia suite or something like that. So it really was that. I think what I'm saying is that it's because of difficulty. It's because of the need that we had that it caused me to realize, okay, we're going to get creative. We're going to create things, and we're going to find things that we can use in creative ways.
Yeah, you're bringing me back in time because I lived through all of the things that you're describing, and I've always been impressed by the resilience of teachers. And
Yes.
I love that teachers are resourceful because, as you pointed out, most schools unfortunately don't have unlimited resources. So teachers do amazing things with the little that is given to them. But even more importantly than that, what I've always been impressed with is a teacher's perspective is different, which you just touched upon, in that I, as a technology director, may be viewing a product or a solution through a particular lens with the expectations that this is the way it would be used in the classrooms. And then I put it before a teacher, and the teacher comes at it from a completely different direction. And they kind of go, yes, but that's great. But like you said, I see it being used in this way. And I'm
Right.
always so amazed by that. And I love that because to me, that's even better. I don't want you doing something the way I'm telling you to do it. I want you to use it the way that you think it's best for you and your students. So it's very interesting to
Well,
hear
and
you
that's
describe
great.
it that
I'm
way.
glad, yeah, I'm glad you see it that way as well. That, you've been supportive of teachers throughout the years in that, because ultimately that mindset, it's looking at the technology for what it is. It's a tool. The
Right.
technology is not an end in itself. The technology is a tool. The end that we're striving for is student achievement, supporting students, supporting teachers, learning. And so the technology is just a tool. And we
Right.
need to look at it that way and say, how can we use it to reach our ultimate goal of helping our students be the most that they can be? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why there's always been the discussion about, well, if you're focusing on Google Docs, they're not going to know Microsoft Word, or they're not going to. And my response to that was always, no, we want to teach them to learn, and we want to give them tools so that
Right.
whatever they're sitting in front of, they feel comfortable using it. And it doesn't matter what the name is that's on the product.
Because it's going to
So
change. It's not going to look like whatever we teach a middle schooler. Do you really think it's going to look the same
uh,
when they're in college or they're
right.
getting a job? No, it's so much more important to learn the skills on a general sense that can then be able to apply them to whatever the situation is. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And the last thing I ever wanted to see in the schools was someone basically replicating what you could do on paper and just making it electronic. Like, there was no
Sure.
value add there. I want the technology to improve the instruction or to enhance the instruction, not to just replace what you were doing on paper. But
Right.
getting a little bit off topic here, so I apologize for that. But let me ask you this. You've done a lot of innovating over the years. That's clear. I mean, anybody who visits your sites, you sees all the resources, has heard you speak in person. It's clear you've been very innovative in the time that you've been doing this. But is there one thing that you would consider to be the most significant, or the first innovation that you recall having come up with?
Well, honestly, probably that homepage construction kit was the first. And that was probably the
Okay.
first thing where I actually made something that did not exist before. And again, it was a situation where at that time we didn't have the tools we have now, like Google Sites and, WordPress and things like that.
Yeah.
And so being able to put that in the hands of the teachers, um, empowered them to be able to connect with their students, connect with the parents, extend the learning outside of the classroom. And so that was probably the earliest. Now, again, that does not even exist today.
Right.
that tool has been sunset a long time ago. But I would say that was the first thing that initially I would consider a innovation that I created. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think you recognized at the time that it was innovative, or was it sort of just something that was happening? But I mean, at some point you must have said, "Wow, this is pretty exciting," and then look to share it with others, right? Or how does
Well,
that process
yeah,
work for you?
I think at first I was just excited because a lot of the way I function is give me a problem and I'll try to solve it. I'm very much problem solving oriented.
Hmm.
And that's important, I think, in the technology field to listen to the teachers and say, okay, where are your pain points? What is the
Yes.
thing that you're struggling with? If you go to my website and you read through my blog posts, I am sure the vast majority of those came because somebody emailed me and said, "Hey, Eric, is there a way I can do this or that?" I went, And then I start playing around with it, and then I come up with a solution, and it becomes a blog post. A
Right.
lot of the things on there are there because somebody had a problem, and I tried to offer a potential solution for that. And so that's what I was doing at that time, as I was seeing the problem and trying to come up with a solution. But then, yeah, school districts surrounding us were like, what are you guys doing over there? How are you getting these teacher web pages? And I'm like, oh, it's just this thing I put together. And I'm like, do you want it?
Right.
And I just started, giving it away to schools all around Ohio and eventually all around the country. There were schools all over who used this tool for many, many years. And I still sometimes will go do a training and people say, this is the guy who created that tool we used years ago. And I've
There you
had,
go.
tech directors tell me, it was so hard for me to make them let go of this eventually, so
Right.
so yeah, it was neat to see that what I was creating was something that could bring value to a lot of folks, and that was definitely encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, if I think back, I'm almost certain, as you were speaking, of having a recall in my mind. That's probably how I first got introduced to you online. Of course, is that I was doing a traditional search for some solution to a problem that I had, and there came up, some responses from you that I'm sure helped us, no doubt. And I think that's important. I think it's important that that's the approach to things. Technology is wonderful, but bells and whistles don't cut it. It needs to solve a problem. If it solves a problem, then there's some value in it. So I think it's great the way you approached it. Were there any significant challenges? I mean, you've mentioned obviously the budgetary constraints and
Right.
having to be resourceful and the limited. But aside from those, because I hate to say it this way, but that's almost typical for a classroom.
It
Many
is.
schools have that. So aside from those traditional limitations, anything else that really became a stumbling block for you as you were trying to innovate?
Well, I mean, as far as challenges go, probably one of the biggest challenges, but I don't see it as a negative, but it is a challenge, is that things are always changing.
Right.
Keeping up with the changes. This is not a situation where you can figure out a solution and say, well, we got that taken care of. Now I can just rest, and
No.
I'm just going to coast on that because give it, well, especially now, the rate of change is so swift compared to even how it was in the past, but it's always been there. Technology is a moving target. Things are always evolving and always changing. Now, on one hand, that's a challenge because it means that amazing webinar you just made, yeah, it's not it's not correct anymore. The buttons
Right.
aren't where they were.
Instantly.
That handout you made, yeah, those screenshots, they're not good anymore. Um, but it also means this tool got shut down. It means this tool added a cool new feature. It means, oh, there's a whole new company that has come up. And now with AI
Right.
exploding all around us. So, on one hand, that can be seen as a negative. Somebody could say, I don't want to deal with that. If that's the case, I understand. I appreciate that. But that is the nature of educational technology. I happen to enjoy that. Maybe it's
Right.
just the way I'm wired. I don't know. But I like the fact that no 2 days are the same. I like the fact that I am a lifelong learner. And I think that's good for all of us, teachers as well, to show that to our students. We want them to learn. Well, we should model that. We should show them that
Absolutely.
we don't know everything. We're still figuring it out. We're learning new things because that's a model of what we want them to be. So for me, yeah, that's a challenge. And I got to always figure out how I can do my best to stay on top of what's going on out there. But it's also what really drives me. And I really enjoy that. So that's a positive in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of touched upon something that I wanted to ask you next, which is the challenges in staying ahead in such a rapidly evolving field. It's time consuming. But that's just one part of it. And do you have any tricks for doing that, or tips, or how do you manage to stay ahead of the curve in terms of technology?
Yeah, I mean, so you have to find what works for you. I'm not saying what works for me will work for everybody, but there's a few things I do. So I'm a big fan of RSS. I don't know how many people even know what those letters stand for anymore, real simple syndication, but RSS basically it allows you to find websites, blogs, etc., that you value, and use an RSS aggregator, a tool that will pull all of those into one place. Because here's the thing, there are hundreds of amazing websites out there that are constantly sharing updates and news and things like that. I can't visit all of those. I don't have time to go click down the link. So instead, I use an RSS aggregator, and there's loads of them out there. You can just Google RSS aggregator and pick one that you like. And what I simply do is I just take a link from the website. Oh, I come across a new cool website. Oh, this is great. Well, I copy and paste it into my RSS aggregator, and then I try once or twice a week. I visit the site, and boom, here are the latest 50 headlines, from all of those websites. And then I can just go boom, 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 boom down the list and go, oh, that one's great. Okay, I'm going to use that in my newsletter. Oh, that one's neat. Oh, I need to investigate that one. So I'm using technology to bring the content to me. Now I've got to find the good websites in the first place, but I'm just always keeping my eyes out for anybody who's sharing good content. And I throw their site into my RSS feed tool, and boom. So that's one thing I do. I'm also really big on signing up for EdTech newsletters. I've got a blog post. I got a blog post on my RSS tool as well, but I've got one on newsletters that I just put out recently, where I list some of my favorite EdTech newsletters, because what do they say? The smartest person in the room is the room. It's all of us together, and so I try to find as many people that are thinking along the same lines that I am, that are kind enough to do a newsletter. If it's once a week, great. If it's once a month, that's great. I don't mind, but I'll sign up for those. And so I have all of those going into a folder in my Gmail, and I'll take, time once a week or so, and I'll read through all the newsletters that have come in. And then of course it's social media, it's YouTube, podcasts. So it's really going to be what works for you. You got to find what makes sense. Those things click for me. Those things help me stay up to date and on top. Other folks might find that, it's TikTok, or it's this, or it's that. They may find the thing that is their source of staying up to date.
That's interesting. It is a challenge to stay ahead. RSS feeds, you're right. Many people probably don't even know what that stands for these days, but incredibly valuable. Unfortunately, the number of available sources, I think I've seen it diminish.
It has. It has.
So a lot of the bigger companies, the news companies and so forth, were doing it previously. They're not doing it as much anymore, but it is a great way to gather information and put it together for yourself. So now, in terms of taking a look forward, are there any particular tools or trends? I mean, of course, AI, everybody's going to say AI, but specifically, is there anything that you think is going to be driving the innovation in the next decade or so?
Well, yeah, and it absolutely is AI, without a doubt. It is AI, but what I'm excited about is once we've gotten over the initial entry into AI, once people have a comfort level with it, where can it really start making a difference? Now, don't get me wrong. The introductory uses are incredibly valuable. I'm in no way saying that's not the case. But if all we do is say, hey, AI can help a teacher save time, it can help them create assessments and re-level text, and generate content that they can use in their class, that's great. Don't get me wrong at all. I mean, that is good thing, because if it means it saves you time, now you've got more time to interact with your students, and that's fantastic. But if that's where we stop, I think we've really missed out on the full potential of what AI is going to do. What I get excited about is saying things like, okay, what is something that we know is educationally valuable, but is not practical under normal conditions, and so we haven't been able to do it. One of those big ones would be personalized learning for students. We all know how important that was back in the 80s. There were studies that were done. Benjamin Bloom had his study where he was able to show that if you could give every student a personal tutor, that their scores on achievement tests would go up 2 standard deviations. And he's like, yeah, but we can't do that. We can't afford a personal tutor for every student. And so here's other approaches and things we can try until, well, guess what? Now we can. Now we can have an AI tutor that each student can work with, that can, support them, meet them where they're at. If they're struggling, re-explain things. If they're excelling, help them go deeper, and be available 24/7 and put it in terms the student will understand. That's what is so exciting, is things like personalized learning for our students. And then the fact that it collects all that information for the teacher. So now teachers have insights. They have actionable insights into, well, what are the students struggling with? What do they know? What don't they know? Which 5 do I need to pull aside now and work with individually? Because now I know these 5 are struggling with this particular concept. So that's what I get excited about, is the next step, which is like just I'm going to echo what you said maybe 10 or so minutes ago, when you said, if you saw a technology tool that just replicated what we're already doing, that's not enough. Oh, it's just basically typing on a computer, but you're just writing on a piece of paper. It's the same thing. Well, same thing with AI. Yeah, some of the AI uses, they're just replicating what we're doing, maybe a little faster, maybe a little more convenient. I want transformative stuff. I want to say, okay,
Yeah.
how can AI help us do things that we cannot do otherwise? It's just not practical. Another example I would throw out would be something like oral assessments, having students answer questions orally and explain things in their own words. Very valuable, excellent way to get at an understanding from the students, but not practical, because you got 125 kids. If everybody gave a 2-minute response, that's 4 hours you have to listen to, and so people don't do it. They just don't do it. It's not enough time. Well, we have tools like Snorkel. That's an AI tool now that I can create an assignment. The kids can hit record and they can just speak their answer. They have a whiteboard they can draw on, and the AI takes my exemplar response, takes the student's response, and helps grade and give feedback. Those are the kind of things I get excited about. Like, if we didn't have this tool, we couldn't do that thing, and now we can.
Right. That's very exciting stuff you mentioned there. Lots of potential, and that's what's so, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, to get a teacher's perspective on things. You're looking at these tools that are coming down the road from a different perspective than the people that might be making them. So it's wonderful to get that type of feedback to say, hey, this is where I see it going and how I think it's going to be most useful, which could be very different from what the people that are designing the tool had in mind when they started designing it. So it's very important to get that information from people like yourself that are on the front line. So thank you for that. And if you were going to now be talking to maybe someone coming up, someone new in the profession, a younger person, anything you tell them about, becoming an innovator, or maybe some suggestions for them?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things we could say, but one thing I would definitely mention is the importance of sharing. Um, I think that is what is one of the things that made the biggest difference in where I'm at here today, is I simply shared whatever I came up with. Um, Sometimes we get a little concerned, like, oh, maybe it's not good enough, maybe it's not perfect.
Mm.
Well, you're right, it's not perfect. Nothing I share is perfect. If I spent another 2 hours, would it be better? Yes. But if I kept following that train of thought, I would never release something, because it would never be good enough. What's
Mm.
that phrase? Done is better than perfect, And so what you have come up with, your take on something, there's value in that. Share it, put it out there, just get it out in front of the world, and be receptive to feedback and suggestions. And so that's pretty much what I've done. Anything that I create, I release under a Creative Commons license.
Mhm.
My particular license I choose is the one where people are allowed to copy, adapt, distribute any way they want. All I ask is leave a link back to where you got it from and keep it free. I make it free, you keep it free, and that's it. And so that way, anything I create, somebody can take and they can put their spin on it, and they
Right.
can build on it. And that's how you really reach multiple people and you reach bigger audiences, is by letting people replicate what you do. And again, it's not that anything that I have created is mine. It's not like, oh, this is something I got inspired by somebody else. I saw this really cool thing. I heard this neat idea. I listened to this podcast. Other people inspired me. This is just my twist on somebody else's idea where I put my own twist on it. I want people to do the same. So I encourage innovators, do that. Put your stuff out there, whatever it is. Is it YouTube? Is it social media? Is it blogging? I don't know, but get it out there. And again, I'm not saying like if somebody wants to go a different route and they want to do like teacher pay teachers or things like that and charge for stuff, I'm not saying that's wrong in any way. I'm just saying that if what you're trying to do is be an innovator and reach as many people as possible, sharing is caring. The more you can share, the better. Put it out there. Don't worry if it's perfect. It's not. That's okay, but it's valuable. And folks are going to learn from it, connect to you. And you know what? You're going to learn. When I do presentations, when I get up in front, I usually start. The first thing I say is, I'm so happy to be here today to learn with you. I do not say I'm here today to present to you. I'm here today to learn with you, because I want to walk out of my presentations with more knowledge than I walked in. I want people to challenge me and ask questions and share their ideas. So sharing and being receptive to hearing back, I think that's really the key for this.
I'd imagine it's also probably very rewarding for you to see the way that something you might have planted the seed, so to speak, and then to watch it blossom. Because as you said, you encourage others to not just make use of what you've done, but to take it a step further. So I'd imagine you've had the good fortune to be able to really see how some of the work that you've done has really expanded and spread out to the world, no?
Absolutely. Yeah. Periodically, I'll get an email from somebody saying, hey, I really liked your project here. Your, whether it was a Google Sheets project or a slides project or whatever it was, here's what I did with it. Here's the version I made. And I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. Here's how I added on to that. Oh, why didn't I think of that? That's really cool, And I'm excited about that because, yeah, they're making it better. They're putting their stamp on it. In the end, what it comes down to is some student went home that day and got to say, I did this really cool thing in school today. I got to create this thing. I got to do this thing. That's what it's all about, right? Isn't that what we're here for? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's terrific. That really is. Now, in terms of things that have contributed to your success, are there, you've mentioned a couple of different tools that you've worked with, but is there anything specific or any particular communities or platforms that you feel really helped you to be especially, or were especially helpful in you being as successful as you are as being an innovator?
Well, sure. So I owe a lot to the Google community. I mean, I started off with, like I mentioned, Google Apps way back in the day. And the vast majority of my EdTech career has been with Google products. And they have phenomenal communities. I'm what they now call a Google champion, but that encompasses the fact that like I'm a Google certified innovator and a Google certified trainer. And each of those has a community that you can belong to, which is thousands and thousands of amazing educators all around the world. And these are the folks that you can get inspired by. And these are the folks you can ask questions of. And these are the folks you can share ideas and get better ideas back from. And so being plugged into the Google communities through that has been phenomenal. And then I've tried to, create communities along the way. We've got our GEG Ohio, the Google Educator Group of Ohio, where we've got, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of educators from all over that are part of that, who ask questions and share ideas and share resources. And of course, whatever, there's a lot of social media tools out there, and some have, come and some have gone, but trying to be plugged into a community from there as well to constantly learn with people. So yes, as much as tools are important, having communities that you can be a part of, whatever it is, yeah, find the community that goes along with your tool. I really appreciate when companies do that. You take something like Magic School or Brisk or whatever the case, they're going to have a Facebook group, or they're going to have some sort of a community hub. Join it, become a part of it, because if you love the tool, you're going to get so much more out of it by connecting with other educators that are also using it.
Yeah, that's key, and that's been my experience in the past, to interact with other people who might just have a little bit more information or just a tip or a suggestion on how you could do something better, and it just go, I never thought of that. That's incredible, and it's very helpful to have that information. What really impresses me with you, though, is the amount of work that you produce, all that you do. I don't know how you find the time for it. I came across today, I think it was, I saw posted on probably LinkedIn. You put up a webinar. I'm going to try to get the name right because I think it's really clever. It was AIAIO, awesome AI uses in education, which is clever and catchy. But that in itself was one piece. The other fact was it's 45 minutes long. And how do you find the time to do all this amazing work? I'm so impressed.
Well, again, a lot of it comes down to sharing everything. So I did not make that webinar just to share. That webinar was part of another project that I was working on, and the point is, everything that I'm involved in, I just try to share it, so that particular webinar came from a different group that I was working with. And so it's like, well, hey, if I'm going to take the time to, create this 45-minute training, maybe other people could benefit from it as well. Because you're right, there is only so much time in the day. And I want to be really careful about this. I do not want to send the wrong message to people of, work, create. This is something I have struggled with in my life. There is a blog post on my site, if you go back a few years, that deals with finding a balance between work and life. It's called Full Bleed. And I've done like little TED Talky things on it before and stuff like that. I do a session on digital well-being and how I have struggled with that my whole life, because I love what I do. So it's not like it's a grind. I love it. And there's no end to it. You could do this forever, 24 hours a day. But then what about your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health? What about my relationship with my wife and my daughter and my grandkids? And what about hobbies? And what about friends and all these other things, And so I do not want to send the wrong message here and make it sound like, oh yeah, you just got to just keep cranking out content. That's why I always couple with anything I do, I try to think, how can I share this broadly? How can if I'm going to put the time into it, I'm going to share it out with the rest of the world. And so it may look like I'm constantly creating things, but it's more that I pretty much have just given you open access to my brain. And so anything that I'm making, I'm trying to just put it out there and say, hey, hopefully this is valuable for others.
Yeah, and it is really important to find that work-life balance. And teachers in general are constantly struggling to get everything out of a full day that they possibly can between their work life, their students' needs, their personal needs. It's always a challenge. So that balance is incredibly important. And having tools like the ones that you've provided and the collaboration component that's available as a result, I think that's always very helpful for them as well. So that's wonderful that you're doing that. What's next for you? What else do you have? I mean, you're doing so many exciting things. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to mention or talk about that's taking place at this time, or something you'd like to promote in particular?
Well, as far as educational technology goes, right now it's pretty much AI, and more AI. That's kind of my focus right now. And so that is really where I'm putting most of my energy. So on my blog, there's access to my YouTube channel, to all of my recorded videos, all of my content. That's really what I'm leaning into, is taking those next steps, saying, okay, I think we're getting to the spot now where we're comfortable enough. We know what ChatGPT is, and this is something that we're understanding. let's go deeper now. Let's take the next step. Let's see how this can really transform education. And so that's what I'm working on. I've got a new keynote that I'm working on. There's been one I've been giving for the last couple of years. That's more of an introduction to AI. And now I'm working on one that I will probably be giving a few times starting this summer and going on from there. That's all about that next step. In essence, leveling up all learners with AI, how this can ultimately impact our students for the best. So that's my focus as far as all of that goes. And then, outside of that, trying to enjoy life a little bit more, play with the grandkids, do all those good things as well. Yeah.
That's the important stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, Eric, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be on here. I also want to thank you for all the great contributions that you've made to education and EdTech in particular. It's all been very useful, and the entire community should be very grateful to you. So again, thank you for being on the
My
podcast
pleasure.
today. Love to have you back at some point to discuss some other things that you're working on down the road. If you'll be back, we'll have you.
Always happy to. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for your time today. Take care.
That's a wrap on this episode of Innovator Insights. A huge thank you to Eric Curts for sharing his experiences, challenges, and innovative solutions in the world of EdTech. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to visit innovatorinsights.io to explore more episodes, read exclusive blogs, and subscribe to our mailing list for updates and future content. You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube. If you found this episode valuable, please leave us a review and share it with your network of friends. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.